Welcome, everybody. It's your favorite Final Four halftime show. The CBS crew does a very good job with it, but it is time for the Saturday Night Power Hour here at the Crosse Commission. I'm Ryan. That's safe.
Oh, Jake will join us soon, but yeah. Oh my God, right. But should we call this? Is this your Liberation Day?
No, because Syracuse's season is not sunk like a rock.
No,
my
the other one is still to be, the story is still to be told. But for you, I mean, this is a big day. Come on.
Oh yeah,
I was so happy for you. First off, and B, I was thinking of. You remember when Jake went to the UVA Maryland game in DC, and it was just like a transcendent experience for him because they just destroyed Virginia. And I was thinking of Jake's game. I was like, I wonder on that level of like a routine win and Jake transcendent watching Maryland destroy Virginia in the regular season. Where did that fall for you today? I figured maybe closer to the latter, but obviously, let you go.
When we get to the game, I'll explain what was my thoughts on it because I think it is a very big step forward for the Q/Slacks program, and we'll explain all that today. So Jake's joining us too, under duress, as you see there on the clip. Before we get going with the Power Hour, though, big number 1 versus number 2 game in the women's game. UNC BC living up to the hype. Tar Heels, big victory there.
Big Bill in attendance.
Big Bill seeing a Tar Heel sweep today.
The Belichick effect, the men one as well. But yeah, they're going to probably meet each other again. I saw Northwestern destroyed Hopkins.
Hopkins is having themselves a great year, top 5. It's kind of funny with
at least somebody at home with having a great year.
No, but it's kind of funny seeing like kind of the programs that have kind of had resurgences. Hopkins having probably the best year as a program with the women in a long, long while. Princeton's back. Yeah, Princeton's back in the mix. Maryland's still steady in the top 10. Cuse, I don't know, kind of walling a little bit. But yeah, it's very interesting with the women's game how you're kind of seeing aligning a little bit with the men's game, a little bit with the programs that are rising to the crop. You're seeing Yale start to really level up as well. So going to be a very fascinating May in the women's game. And obviously, as we get closer to the tournament, we talk a bit more about what's going on the women's side. But today was definitely an appetizer. If that's a part 1 of a Eagles Tar Heels trilogy, we're in for a treat. All right, so a lot to cover today in college lacrosse. Jake missed out on a great whopper out of safe.
I asked Ryan if this was his Liberation Day.
and I replied, not necessarily, because it's not because Cuse hasn't fallen like a rock like my IRA.
Which IRA?
Hey, now the other one's connected to Briggs.
So many ways you can go with that statement.
Just
so many directions.
Alrighty. On that note, you know the deal for veterans of our show. We put 1 hour on the clock. I'm going to get it on my phone. We talk about as many games as we can. And then an extra time, we wrap things up with a nice little bow. And that is that.
What else
if you like that whopper of a joke from Safe, what you should be doing, hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. We've had some really good one-liners this season.
Oh, that's a good one.
And get the notifications on for when we go live as well, in case we're running a little bit late. We were intending going on 7, but then we had some nuttiness going on. We'll get to that in a little bit. But we are going to start with Syracuse 14, Notre Dame 9. I'll say this. In the Gary Gate era, I think with each year, you've kind of seen the progression of like how big the wins have been. So 2 years ago, around this time 2 years ago, that 2-game stretch against Princeton and UNC, where Cuse came away with 2 very good victories, kind of showed that things were starting to turn the right direction. Then last year, that win against Duke, I think, the way that they did it, kind of announced that, hey, Cuse is going to be back in the tournament mix. Today, though, as David said in the chat, with the crowd going way up into the 300 levels, what was it, 11,000 plus at the Dome today?
11,000.
I think it was like 234 or something.
Box score has 11,268.
Terry has 11,682. Biggest
so-
crowd of the season and biggest crowd in the Dome for men's lax, at least, since 2015.
Yeah, so by the way, clock is on. But the atmosphere, and especially against a Notre Dame team, you know, in the Big East days, it's kind of funny. In the Big East, Syracuse dominated this rivalry. But ever since the move to the ACC, it's flip-flopped. And Notre Dame, the past 5 years, has absolutely dominated this series and have been completely in Syracuse's head. And the beginning of this game was looking like it was going to be kind of a repeat of that. Notre Dame gets off to a 3-0 start. And then Syracuse did something that I don't think I've seen a Syracuse team do in 10 years. They bullied another team into a chippy game and really dictate the terms. It was the opposite effect of, you know, what Towson did to Syracuse in the 2016 quarterfinals. Many other examples of that where, you know, an opposing team comes in and kind of dictates the terms. Navy, Army. And this really felt like something big. I mean, obviously with Syracuse, they're going to be judged by what they do in May. But in terms of regular season games, you know, Anish and Kark were talking a lot about it. This is the biggest win of the Gary Gait era. It feels like something big has changed here against a team that just completely dominated the Orange for 5 years. And the Orange come around and just completely throw them off their game, play out of their head, get them out of their heads, and be the bully. And just the defensive performance, McCool and Cage, the offense firing up. That was Spallina's best game against a big name opponent. I know last week's stat sheet was 0-1, but you know the offense was still humming against Virginia, and Spallina's still doing his part, even if he's not producing points. But today he had his best game against a big name opponent in his career, I think. And it really all got put together. And this is something. Again, this is going to be a team that's going to be, the narrative on this team is going to be dictated on what they do in May. But this is, you know, coming out of a win like this feels like that they've turned the corner from being, you know, back in the hunt to back to being a legit contender. And if they play like this the rest of the way out, if they play like this against Cornell next week and then the remaining ACC games, look out, because that was the best all-around performance I think I've seen this team in the Gary Gait area. I mean, yeah, they could have put the Irish away a little bit quicker in the third quarter, but you can't fault that effort at all. They, as I said during this game, they look like the bully for the first time in a long time. And having that shoe on the other foot was a hell of a lot of fun to watch.
I mean, I thought everyone, I was going to look at the second quarter, the 6-0 explosion, but I thought it was really so important that Anderson and English got you guys on the board in that first quarter, because it did start out sketchy. You know what I mean? Like, I know we had a couple of jokes in the DMs, but you know, Notre Dame comes out 3-0 lead, like crowd was still in it, but you know, you could feel like a nervous energy. And then for, you know, both teams kind of held each other scoreless for the rest of the first period until, you know, Anderson scored with 4 minutes left. And I thought that was like really important, because it's like yeah, you have to have like a response after going down 3-0. And then English, and then it just snowballed. And that's what I mean, I've seen that. I remember the Hopkins game at the Dome a couple years ago, which is like where I kept making jokes. Like, that Syracuse is not back, but the sound of the Dome kind of felt like it was back. And that crowd, when it really, like, when they were on that run, like, it really kind of like felt like the 80s or 90s. Like, it was loud as everyone really, you could feel the energy. And then being able to, withstand the comeback from Notre Dame, which was, inevitable. Like, it may not have the talent as like the super team era that they had, but there was going to be a response. And then, as you're right, Ryan, to just respond by Syracuse's part to like put the foot down and not let them actually make a comeback. Really impressive. Yeah, most impressive win of the Gate era, with potentially more to come, because this team starts to look like what we were talking about the preseason. I mean, I think that's why like we all had them like kind of high like in our preseason polls, and not that they disappointed, but a couple bumps in the road here and there, and this was like a signature statement win, and it's going to kind of change the landscape of the ACC. Like, now maybe it's North Carolina and Syracuse race. So.
Yeah, and two other points. One, I like how you put up Anderson. I mean, the way that he's stepped up since getting onto the roster, getting onto the starting lineup, that's a great sign for the Orange. It's more scoring depth for them. And even with Deere getting bumped down to just the extra man unit, he still had a great goal on a man up as well. So he's still producing even in a reduced role. So I think that's a very good sign that they're getting additional things. And how you pointed out with the signature win, because they've had some nice wins this year, but the Johns Hopkins win's not holding up as much. The Virginia win's not holding up as much. They needed that big win to get through this April without having pressure on them to have to win here on Long Island next week or against UNC in 2 weeks. UNC or Duke that they have? Let me see the order real quick.
No, you guys got Cornell.
Duke, have to stress out about the Cornell Duke UNC game. So having that makes them have a lot more breathing space where they could do their thing. And with the confidence that this team is showing, I think the offense is the ball movement that we were expecting out of them. You're seeing it now against elite defenses. They're not having to resort to the trick shots and everything to try and generate offense. Now it's all in their sticks, their quick ball movements, the box across styles really shining through now. And now they got the big win with Notre Dame, so they don't have to worry about where they're going to be on Selection Sunday. So now they could go off and really, really build it. And if they can knock off Cornell next week, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, they'd be number one in the country, probably. The big win is obviously significant. I mean, the opponent significant, considering, as Ryan mentioned, the history of the rivalry in recent years. And yeah, Notre Dame got out 3-0, and there's a bit of a feeling, well, man, here we go again. Especially with how Notre Dame had been playing the last couple weeks. But Syracuse really calmed it down after that and played with look, Syracuse plays very aggressive. Syracuse is a team that is going to take chances defensively. They're going to obviously push in transition. They rack up a lot of penalties in games, as we've seen throughout the season, and they did it again here today. And sometimes, listen, there's some hits maybe that step over that line, and as a team on the whole, finding that balance, I think, has been the real question for them for a couple of years now. How do you play with a sort of restraint, or I call it like a restrained aggression? How do you not kind of have your team come undone by trying to push defensively? How do you not create offense for the other team? How do you not find yourself in the penalty box for 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a game that allows for things to swing because you put them on man up? And it wasn't perfect in that regard because they did give Notre Dame opportunities man up. at different points, maybe get back into it, but they got the stops when they needed to as well. And it's just overall again, not perfect. This honestly, if you're for Notre Dame, kind of feels like a real sore one. Syracuse blew 9 clears in this game, and if you told Notre Dame going in, hey, you're going to force 9 failed clears for Syracuse, who is, I think, the best clearing team in the country, or at minimum, they're in the top 5, and they cleared 19 of 28, and Notre Dame lost by 5. But other than that, I mean, and look, that's other than that, when you fail 9 clears, normally there's no other than that. But they had 16 turnovers. That's 9 of your 16 turnovers right there. So again, you put that to the side. They took care of the ball. This is a team that's taking care of the ball incredibly well all season. They're top, again, might be the best in the country, but at minimum, they're top 5 in the country in fewest amount of turnovers, like per possession. So all of that, it felt the most under control. And this, again, following up on the Virginia game, where Virginia wanted to make that game chaotic. That was Virginia's route to winning, and Syracuse found a way to settle it down. Finding a way to play at multiple speeds that's part of being a championship contender. If it's a defensive game, can you play methodical 6 on half-court offense and win? If it's a transition game, can you have success cashing in on your transition opportunities, get back in transition on defense? And that hasn't been Syracuse for the last couple of years. They've been very good at when the game is sped up, and they're, as we see, when the type of game that the Dome crowd always loves, Syracuse has been very successful in that. But we kind of saw in the quarterfinal last year against Denver what happens when it's a half-court, very more methodically paced game. And Syracuse is winning in a lot of different ways right now. And again, statistically, we talked about it on the show on Wednesday. Statistically, this is a team that across the board is probably, you make the argument, the best in the country. They're the only team out there that was top 10 in adjusted offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, face-off efficiency, and adjusted save percentage. So that's the profile of a national championship team. The question was, they didn't have a significant win on their ledger, and this is about as significant a win as you can get. It validates where they are positioned in terms of their kind of statistical profile. That looked like a team that's very elite offensively. I mean, they scored on 41% of their possessions. They held Notre Dame to like 27%. And so, yes, they win. This looks like a team with a championship ceiling. There's teams that can make the Final Four, and that's, as Ryan mentioned, that's the question for this team because they haven't done it yet, and that's the standard at Syracuse. But there's teams that can make the Final Four, and there's teams that can win the national championship. Winning 2 games on that weekend is, as we've seen for so many years, it's a significant hurdle. You can get to the Final Four and lose by 7, and great week, but enjoy the food and head on back home. Winning 2 games is different, and again, we haven't seen this team make it to a Final Four, so certainly until they do that, that's going to be the question. But this looks like a team that could win 2 games on championship weekend playing like that.
I feel like you can maybe make a case there are more talented teams or more, maybe not efficient, because Jake, as we know, that Syracuse is very efficient. But
they're pretty talented. I mean, up there, they're up there with.
Yeah, exactly.
How many rosters would you pick above? How many of that lineup? I mean, how many would you pick above them?
Oh, for sure. Well, my point is, like, you pick like more talented or better players, better scheme, but like Syracuse does have a different gear that they can't get in, like that other teams like kind of have, but it's like not to this extent, especially like if their defense plays like this. Ryan, I mean, you were loud and cool in the chat. You're right. Like they have that aspect, and is like maybe if they don't have it going on in the dot, if they can get the turnover or the stop,
And they
And
do,
then-
have the face-off guy too.
Yeah, we do have the face guy. Yeah,
They
and
might have the best face-off guy in the country.
But as I'm saying, like, even though my point is like that, everyone says like great, but like even if that doesn't, like if that defense though can be like that throughout this rest of the, like that, and then pushing like just funneling possession to that offense, and if they, they're just really are lethal, and they kind of have like just you guys are F1 fans. I'm just thinking of like cars, like just, they do seem to have a different gear offensively. If when that defense is like really humming and adding the face off, like. They're really a complete team that has like a higher ceiling than most.
Yeah, and to that point, to that defense, I've been beating the drum about how this defense has really stepped up this year. How many man-down situations have they completely turned the momentum of the game around on a dime this year?
Their man down is one of their best. I mean, it has to be because they take so many penalties, but that was what they were good at last year, was man down defense. I mean, they're really, it's kind of one of the backbones of their team in a lot of ways. And go ahead, finish your point, Ryan. Oh.
Yeah, and that, and I think too with late game situations, you feel confident when the other team has the ball down 2, that they're going to get that big stop. You saw that in the Hopkins game where Hopkins has possession. You felt confident in that group getting that turnover or getting that big stop from McCool or forcing that shot clock violation. Look at how Notre Dame was just completely discombobulated on late shot clock situations. We haven't seen that out of the Irish in ages. Usually late clock situation, when it gets down to 20-10 on the shot clock, that's when they're at their most lethal. And Notre Dame could do nothing about it. And yes, I know Notre Dame had, 2 goals called back too, but even with that, I mean, Notre Dame could never get onto that rhythm today.
No, Syracuse I think maybe midway through the second half was putting a shorty on Devin McClain. And I just think Notre Dame, teams have figured. David mentioned how Michael Graves was tremendous for Syracuse today. Just giving them another kind of piece defensively, which that's probably what they need. Is the question for them defensively is their depth. Do they like short stick Midi? Carter Rice is phenomenal. He's an All-American level player. But how do they have enough there at the rope unit, and especially at short stick Midi to kind of hang up over late in a game, in a fourth quarter, in a quarterfinal, or 2 games in 3 days in a championship. For Notre Dame, offensively, teams have, especially the elite teams defensively, and Syracuse, Georgetown, Ohio State, Maryland, especially the Syracuse, Ohio State, Maryland. Those are 3 of the best, really high-end defenses in the country. And they've figured out the beat on them. Their teams are just not going to let Jake Taylor score goals. Like, they are packing it in, and they're like, nope, like, this guy isn't going to beat us. And so if teams are packing it in like that against you and they're crowding the crease, there was one moment in that where I think it might have been Taylor who tried to go to the goal, and he got surrounded, like late in the shot clock, like Ryan mentioned, and he got swarmed by like 3 dudes, just put him in a coffin. Teams are like, they're just not letting Taylor take over and dictate the game. So if that's the case, you have to win matchups on the perimeter, dodge through your midfield, and force guys to, or behind exegely, and force guys to slide off the crease. You have to clear the lane, because right now the lane is so compressed there. And you're just not seeing Notre Dame win those matchups consistently enough. And with McClain, who moved down to the attack for Picorni, the freshman, if he's going to get a short stick and he's not going to take advantage of that matchup, then teams are going to double pull your midfield, and that means Angrick, who's probably your best dodging midfielder, and then another part that goes with this is, man, Jordan Faison, he is not. I mean, I at one point asked, like, I think I DM'd someone else, and I also DM'd in our group chat. I was like, have they called Faison's name all game? And go ahead, Ziv.
No, there wasn't, but just to prove your point, the exception to prove the rule. Like there was one, but it was just like a pass, and then they kind of referenced the football season.
Well, and this is, I mean, the football thing, you kind of got to wonder. It's like, he just doesn't seem to have the legs right now.
Yeah, that's an underrated part of it. Season the story is Notre Dame football going all the way to the national championship might have had a big role for Faison and all the other the depth players that are two-way players.
I mean, yeah, you've got, I don't know how much to the degree, but we know that change is hard. I mean, Dante Trader was fantastic for Maryland in 1 year as a short stick DMIDI. And after that, it was like, he can't do that anymore. I mean, part of that was he wanted to really see if he could make a run at the NFL draft, but that's just such a drain on your body. You're basically playing all year long.
The two most high collision sports there is.
Yes, and you're playing from what? He's been going nonstop since like August. And it's Faison, but it's also, I mean, Buckner.
Not to, but like last year's title run,
Yes.
Extended into whatever.
Yeah, you played the maximum lacrosse season for 2 years in a row, and then the maximum football season.
I mean, yeah, he's been going and going and going for such a long time. And past him, you've got Buckner, who's one of they're probably their second, third best shorty. And it took him a little time to get up to speed and get going. Also, the number one overall recruit, Matt Jeffrey, who's a guy who maybe you'd be like, all right, we need a spark here. We need a jolt. Put a talented guy out there who maybe we can see if he can athletically impose himself on the game. Well, he was part of the football team too. And so he's basically has not been able to have like a normal sort of freshman integration to the D1 level. So if teams are able to, because before it was always, if you try and shorty Faison, forget about it. Because he's just going to run by you. If he can't run by a shorty and they're able to double pull Angrick and whoever else is running through that midfield, it really becomes hard to see them winning matchups consistently on the perimeter. And then it's like, all right, you got to be able to hit shots from the outside. If that's another way you went off the crease. Syracuse on the man down, I really noticed Syracuse was giving them a lot of space up top. They were playing really packed in man down, kind of like daring a little bit to take the outside shot. And last year you couldn't do that with Notre Dame because if you gave Eric Dobson time and room, forget about it. And that was why Notre Dame was maybe the best man up we've ever seen. You got Dobson on the outside, you can't pull off him, can't pull off Taylor. You got Kavanaugh's down there. This year they don't. I mean, today they shot 9 of 33. A tough shooting performance, and it was worse for a while there. So teams, the elite defenses, and it's not, again, their offense had some strong games. Overall, statistically, they are right up there still. They were number one coming in. And we saw them against Michigan. They were great. Against Duke, they were great. But these really top-end defenses they've got their beat on them. And we've seen Notre Dame try some different things. Obviously, they made the switch, put McClain at the attack for McCorney. But so far, they haven't. In these types of games, there's these long stretches where they haven't been able to kind of figure out the fact that Taylor's kind of become a bit of a passenger. I mean, look, if you're going to if your attack's going to get one guy, if one guy in your attack is drawing a pull, it's Chris Cav, then two other guys are getting shorties, and they're not going to punish those shorties, man, it's hard to play offense. It's just really hard. And on the whole, last point I'll make, the Notre Dame just could not control matchups anywhere on the field. They couldn't do it offensively, as we talked about. Defensively, Ryan mentioned Peyton Anderson, and I talked about that on the pod with Safe on Wednesday. Him going into the lineup has really changed the Syracuse offense because what was the thing we mentioned? Well, Trey Deer got a short stick. Spallina obviously drew a pole and largely usually been taken out of the game in these types of games. Hiltz draws a pole. Tough matchup for him. Then you get English and Leo double poled up at the midfield, and those are your two best, most consistent Dodgers. Again, same thing Notre Dame. Tough road to hay. But now you got Anderson down there, and I noticed it from the first possession of the game. Notre Dame put a short stick on Michael Leo. And now listen, this was there. I don't know if there were a lot of answers because Anderson scores Syracuse's first goal and he dodges a pole to score. But I still think, man, putting a short stick on Michael Leo is something I would never, ever do. I know Ben Ramsey's a good player. He's the best Dodger Syracuse has. And if Syracuse is now at a point where he's drawn a shorty or even English dodging a shorty, I could maybe put on English just because he's going to play so much defense. He might tire himself out by the end. And you go Anderson. All right, maybe you try and put it. I don't know if you can cover Anderson with a shorty. And all of a sudden, this is where the options open up for Syracuse's offense. This is where now they become much tougher to defend. Before it's been straightforward to cover them for the past 2-3 years. Now you have to really make some questions. You have to be like, all right, I don't know quite what we're going to do here. And that really opened up. It balanced the field for that offense significantly. If you can only put one pole up at the up of that midfield for a team that's usually been driven by their midfield, that's tough. And Notre Dame just could not control the matchups at any point. Even when Leo wasn't, I don't know if he had what do you have today? 2 goals on 7 shots, but he was getting past his man consistently. And yeah, that's Notre Dame just could not really on it. It has been a long time since you've seen that Notre Dame struggle to control matchups. They've had the control of every matchup for 2 years because they're so experienced and talent. But this year it's a different story. And
7 different goal scores for the Orange, by the way.
It was a much different game. Yeah, and that's another thing. If you want to point out maybe a flaw for this Q team, scoring depth, second midfield. Hoddle did have 2 goals, but do you have that first midfield? It logs a lot of minutes. English particularly logs more minutes than maybe anyone in the country. But this offense on the whole, look, DeLeo had 2 goals. English had 2 goals. Anderson had a goal and 2 assists. Hiltz was very strong, and Spallina, as mentioned, had the best game of his career. So it's a big win for Syracuse. And interesting going forward for Notre Dame. I think they'll be fine. As far as I don't think they're like a 500 in third 500. I mean, I know Quint was mentioned on the UNC Virginia game. They're 5-3, but it's going to be interesting to see how this team going forward after this type of loss.
Yeah, their next game will be against Virginia, a team that they've kind of the only team that's given them trouble in the ACC the past couple of years. So it's going to be interesting to see that. Jake, I really liked that game.
Yeah, I liked it too.
Yeah, as an Orange fan, very much like that game. What should our subscribers do if they like this video?
They should hit the like button. They should smash the like button, in fact.
Smash that like button like I smashed my fist, smashing my fist and pumping my fist.
Even if you're not subscribed, subscribe now and smash the like button. Unless you hit the like button earlier, don't hit it again because that would unlike the video. So if you haven't already liked the video, like the video.
Yeah, it does get extra. But on to something that one of our members will not like. Big upset before we came on the air. Rutgers 8, Maryland 6. So the Scarlet Knights, after stumbling through non-con play, is now up to 2-1 in Big Ten play with wins against Rutgers and with wins against Hopkins and now Maryland. In a true to form for the Big Ten this year, with a defensive battle, but this one really came out of nowhere with the Scarlet Knights coming out on top 8-6. And this is with having a long scoring drought in the process. So weird one in Piscataway, but Rutgers with probably the upset of the year to this point.
Jersey, we did it. We did. I was talking with Ryan pre-show. I was like, it is kind of amazing as this Rutgers team of the Rutgers teams in recent memory that pulled it off because this is their first victory over Maryland. Just an absolute brawl of a game. I mean, Rutgers had their scoring ineptitude, but Maryland also. To in large extent, it was because of the stellar play of Cardin Stoller, who was as the joke I just put out there for from Succession fans, he was doing everything he could to turn around that tanker. I mean, absolutely an amazing night. 13 big time saves, especially that flurry towards the end where Rutgers were still kind of clinging to what was a 3-goal lead and then they turned to a 2. But Maryland sloppy for sure in this game, but the shot selection I wasn't. I don't think it was like they were horrible, but it was just, I think to an extent Stoller made it a bad day for Maryland, just as the way he was playing, and then defense in general, just a cohesive unit, attacking double teams, really aggressive on ground balls. This was that Rutgers defense that we saw during their really big run when they made their Final Four, and the scoring, they just did enough. I mean, I think the announcers were saying throughout the broadcast that that's all they cared about was just doing enough, even if it was 1-0 or at that point it was 5-3. So I mean, big win for Rutgers, big win for them in terms of the standings, but they're climbing up the RPI. I mean, 16th, kind of towards the back end of a bubblish team, but they keep going. I mean, it's not unheard of for them to maybe get the 2 seed. So Rutgers in a strong position this year, and I was talking with Ryan pre-show. I was thinking, pre-show during our midweek. Michigan beat Maryland and Rutgers. Michigan beat Maryland and Hopkins in one season. And the next week, Rutgers completes that as well by beating Maryland. So kind of a bad run for the Maryland teams in the Big Ten. But if you're a Rutgers fan, definitely is really happy to see the boys pull that off. So. I mean, I didn't want to, break Jake's heart, but I did have my RU shirt that I got when they were giving out for fans during one of their home games. But there he is. We did it, Jake. Come back, Jake.
There's no conference solidarity here when your team loses.
Yeah, God, that was
it's a good day for Jersey, Jake. We can be happy for that. I mean, I know.
Why would I care about that? I'm not from Jersey. Never been to Jersey.
Jersey championship hopes right on Princeton, not Rutgers.
Don't have any. I wasn't alive for those. I mean, I was alive, but I didn't watch those Vince Carter net teams.
I love those Vince Carter net teams.
Derek Coleman,
Jason Kidd, Richard Jefferson.
I don't.
Man, if they didn't run into the Lakers and Spurs, they would have had a title. Those were the days when the East was so bad. But man,
Kenyon Martin,
Kenyon Martin, yeah,
Kenyon Martin.
K. Martin.
I saw
Keith Van Horn.
The current first round matchup in the 4-5 in the East is Pacers Pistons. And honestly,
baby, yes, we're bringing back the mid 2000s.
This was the
people forget that the Malice of the Palace was the first game after the Eastern Conference Final that they played each other.
This game was basically the version of a Pacers Pistons.
I'm just gonna go with another Jersey reference: the neutral zone trap New Jersey Devils.
True, yeah. There's in the 04 finals, Eastern Conference Finals, I think there were multiple games won in the 60s. I mean, just pure rock fight, just dudes punching each other in the face. This game was pretty similar to that. this was awful, truly awful. I would say Maryland's worst game of the season. I know the Loyola game, but it's always weird playing at Ridley and it was raining and all that. This was just, boy. Look, man, Adam said in our group chat, and I've been hammering this drum with the Big Ten all season. I mean, this is the Big Ten. Adam was saying, like, every Big Ten game is the same. Whoever has the better goalie wins. And Carden Stoller outplayed Logan McNaney in this game. He was tremendous. Certainly seemed in Maryland's head. And Maryland didn't do a good job putting the shots on cage. I think they only had like 50% of their shots on cage. Didn't do a good job hitting the ones they did on cage. Stoller made some terrific stops at pretty much just throughout the game. One really good looks for Maryland. Yeah, this is what it looks like in the Big Ten. I mean, your goalie has to be terrific in order to win. I mean, the Ohio State Hopkins game, maybe we'll talk about later. I mean, Ohio State was a better team, and they grew the lead by the end. But that first half, it was what? Fayak had 6 more saves. I mean, that first half easily could have gone the other way if you switched the goalies. The goalie performance was different. Fayak was tremendous. Look, man, I mean, the Big Ten has 2 teams in the top 4 in RPI right now, and they're a combined 1-4 in the conference. The 3 teams in the Big Ten to make the NCAA tournament the last 3 years are a combined 1-7.
Jesus, you know, we're talking about the RPI. You just told me about a side effect. This is going to make Princeton's numbers even more ridiculous.
Yes, they now have.
It was close. It was like within a thousandth of a point. Now.
Princeton's going to finish with the number 1 RPI.
Broke up, yeah.
Princeton's going to finish. Yeah, Princeton's going to finish.
Princeton was dipping, Lehigh and then.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we'll see. Princeton's got the lower end of their schedule now, which will drag it down. If Princeton loses a game, which I think they're losing him somewhere.
But it brought Penn State back into a top 5. Who gives them another top 5 win?
0-2 in Big Ten play and 4th in RPI. Ohio State's 11th, which this tells you. Do you want to know the virtues of schedule, like how important scheduling is to this stuff? Ohio State's 11-1 and they're 11th in RPI. Cornell is 9-1 and they're 10th. Which here you go, strength of schedule. Ohio State's 21st. Cornell's 18th.
Cornell will get a little boost. We'll get a boost next week with Cuse, but even still,
yes. Especially they got to win. I mean, if you lose, like scheduling matters, folks. And it's just I knew it was going to be a crazy Big Ten season because this is the types of games that's kind of been played the last couple of years. But you've got, with the exception of, I mean, the top Rutgers, Michigan, Maryland, and Ohio State all have very good defenses. And it's kind of similar to last year. You had Hopkins, Maryland, Penn State, and Ohio State who have very good defenses. But the difference this time is with Rutgers and Michigan having good defenses, they're able to be in these games and withstand for Rutgers a long scoring drought. And it just makes, again, every game in this league is going to be wide open. Bring a tire iron.
Bring your rocks for the rock fight.
Bring a baking sheet and just swing it at each other. Because, your goalie's going to have to be great. You're going to have to get stops. And it's hard to score. For Maryland, you kind of thought, that we wondered if that Michigan game was an indication of something, and it didn't look so against Penn State. Part of that Penn State was their transition offense was terrific. They really got nothing in transition in this game at all. Nobody really got anything in transition in this game. For Maryland, when their midfield is taken out of the game, and this is the second time in 3 weeks this has happened, it's hard for them to score. Michigan really just put everything on the attack, Maryland's attack. They took the midfield out of it. Again, here, Maryland's midfield, I think I don't know if they had a goal in this game. Bryce Ford had 3 turnovers, I think. Keegan didn't have a goal. Jack Schultz had 1 assist. The second midfield really struggled. if Maryland is driven through what their midfield can do and then the ball movement they create on the perimeter. They don't have a big behind the goal presence. Urksa at times, and I thought he played okay. The 3 turnovers though, not great. He had been really taking care of the ball a lot better. This was the type of game where Maryland, the weakness, I mean, I'm not going to use the A word, but the lack of that kind of preeminent go-getter Dodger, the guy who could just create his own shot, really kind of shined a light. They needed somebody to just go out there and create and make something happen, and they don't have that guy. Eric Spanos is a great player. He takes care of the ball incredibly well, great assist to turnover ratio, always makes the right decision, but he's not a guy who's going to go get his own shot. And Urksa tried it 2 times, didn't have a great game. Kelly isn't a Dodger. So when you force Maryland into needing to create through that attack, you get some weaknesses. You see some weaknesses. And nobody was really able to do that in the non-con play. 2 teams have now done it in Big Ten play. And part of that's the type of games that we see are played here where there's less transition and different things like that. But it is something that Maryland, I wonder if, I think it was Terry Foy who kind of talked about this on his in his one of their like poll column this week, that Maryland didn't make any changes to their lineup after the Michigan game, and they stuck with the same group, and the same group played great against Penn State. And you wondered if how the confidence that John Tillman has in this team. I wonder if going to Ohio State, we see, or they'll have Ohio State at, yes, they are going to Ohio State. If you might see some changes, do you maybe move somebody down to the attack and try and play Spanos and Urksa more through the midfield? Do you maybe put like Jack Schultz was the one guy who seemed like he kind of makes little things happen? Do you maybe get him on that first midfield more? I'd be interested to see if we don't see some different adjustments now for Maryland going forward. I don't know if you'll get a lot. Look, this team's going to make the NCAA tournament regardless. They're still, you could argue, the number 1 seed because they beat Princeton, and I mean, even if any team, they beat so many of their top teams in that mix that they're going to be in a great position for a high seed. So maybe they don't want to show their hand, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got some, maybe some just at least minimum tweaks going to Ohio State, which is going to be another game like this. Rock fight, Fiok, McNaney, whoever's better. That's the thing. Goalies in the Big Ten. You could argue that Stoller, Fiok, McNaney, Hunter Taylor's really good for Michigan, but I mean, Frasian has been like the 4th or 5th best goalie in the Big Ten this year, which is a genuinely nuts statement to make considering how good he's been for Penn State throughout his career. That's the type of game we're getting.
All right, we got 18 minutes on the clock, so we'll do this next. That's a little bit rapid.
Just before we move on, it is crazy that potentially 3 teams could sweep the Maryland teams next week if Ohio State pulls it off against Maryland next weekend.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a good sign for the strength of the conference as a whole, but not great for anyone who's fans of the Chase or the Terps.
Speaking of that,
this kitchen is so hard to clean. If only there was an easier way.
This sink is filthy. I'm Derek Bum. This greasy hob. New kitchen gun. Grubby tiles. Goodbye, God. Rusty tack. All clean again.
Johns Hopkins still hasn't won in Big Ten play.
Adam might need that kitchen gun after Rutgers did, but pulling off what Hopkins definitely can't.
So now I can play that video again because I don't feel bad that that's Syracuse's quality win. Now that they got Notre Dame on the ledger on the resume, but yes, Ohio State takes care of business against the Jays, 14-10 at Homewood on homecoming day. So yeah.
Only good thing from a Hopkins perspective is our RPI did go up 4 points. You know, from 18 to 14.
God, I love it. God, listen. Whatever you want to say, there's so many things that can be said about the RPI.
But I just love the bracketologies that have been coming out where people are just using RPI straight up.
I genuinely love how much the RPI makes people mad.
It's just math. I love Zach brought it down perfectly. He's like, people are like, well, yeah, the official RPI will be on Selection Sunday. Zach was from lacrosse. It's like, it's just the formula. It's all like official. Like, just do the math right.
You can do it yourself. Like, you can run the numbers and do the RPI yourself.
Run the numbers, just independent research.
Get an Excel.
Yeah, the formula. Yeah, bang.
Running.
I mean, it's again, there's lots of things you can say about it. Look, people are going to see Ohio State at 11th in RPI and be like, and Cornell at 10th in RPI, and those will be probably the 1 and 2 teams in the country in the poll this week, and be like, what the hell? This thing is stupid. For the record, listen, Ohio State's going to make the NCAA tournament. Like, that's going to happen. Cornell is going to make the NCAA tournament.
Johns Hopkins is not, unless they win the Big Ten.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. But, I mean, it's hard to see it for Hopkins. Again, I'm not going to rule anything out in the Big Ten. We've seen they might be one of like 2 teams in the Big Ten tournament who really needs something come when that tournament comes around. So we've seen the motivational gap play out. But look, Hopkins I think it's a similar story with Virginia. We talk about they're not as talented as they've been the past 2 years. Some of that's injuries. Melendez out for a month now. That's really tough. I thought their offense played better today. I don't know how you felt. I did think the offense, they got a lot of good looks. And look, 10 goals against an Ohio State defense, that's a tough defense to play on. And I thought they didn't hit their shots. And that part of that's how great Fiok was. A good goalie can get in your head, certainly. On the defensive end, they obviously lost Patrick Hackler now. Tyler I did come back, but he was out for a minute because of a broken jaw. I mean, they've just taken a lot of some already from last year. They lost a lot of personnel, and they've taken some licks. Their defense is not helping it. Jamison Kester has been a good defensive coordinator for a long time. He was at UMBC. He was there at Ohio State, and he did a good job with this Hopkins unit the last couple of years. This ain't working. I mean, Alex Marinier can't be having time in room step downs.
The double team that left him open. I remember I said in the chat, I was like, "Oh my god!"
It's been the story for them since the beginning of the year, really. And I get it. That's how you want to play defense. What's more important is figuring out the way to stop. I mean, figuring out a way to get stops. But if you're Hopkins and you want to make an upset, and this is true for any team, if you want to make an upset when you're a less talented team, you got to shoot the ball well, you got to get saves, you got to win faceoffs. Now, Hopkins does win faceoffs, and Logan Callahan's having an amazing year, and it's going to be tough pill to swallow, I'm sure, for Hopkins fans that Logan Callahan's having this type of, All-American type season in a year that might be a lost season. But you got to shoot the ball well, and Hopkins they can't hit shots. They've got kind of one elite shooter in Chevette, and teams are pressing out on him. Or at least one guy you figure could be an elite shooter in Chevette. Other than that, they don't got guys who are hitting shots. And you need saves, and Hopkins has played 3 goalies now this season. Felt kind of the goalie carousel felt kind of. I thought Webb played pretty well when he came in, but the goalie carousel, the small midfielders, the kind of lack of physical presence felt sort of late Petro years. Kind of that's kind of the vibe it gives off with the way this roster is right now. And it's a young roster, so I think they'll be better next year. But yeah, if you want to get upsets and you want to win, be able to pull these games off, you need to get saves, hit shots, and that's not everything we just mentioned. how do you make upsets in the Big Ten? You got to play great defense. You got to be able to create long scoring droughts or withstand long scoring droughts of your own. And you need a great goalie. Well, Hopkins can't really withstand long scoring droughts of their own. When Hopkins has kind of gone, we've seen the last 2 games, they've had like 4 or 5 goal runs and they've kind of had some explosions coming out of the half. But they've had long scoring droughts, and when they've had those long scoring droughts, the other team's putting 4 or 5 goals on them. And Hopkins is pretty much has the worst goalie situation in the league. So that's not the recipe to pull upsets off in the Big Ten. Just not how it's going to get done.
I mean, this was kind of for me a little bit expected, like just the way the Jays were playing without Melendez. But like this is kind of what it is. I mean, there's 2. I was keeping track. There was 2 15-minute or plus scoring droughts for Hopkins in this game, and it's partly like I thought Caleb really did play very strong in the first quarter, first half, but it was also some of just like Jules was saying during the broadcast. Ohio State and Hopkins both had 14 turnovers in this game. Hopkins had, I think it was the cost turnovers.
14.
Were, 3 cost turnovers for Ohio State and 8. So Hopkins was like taking the ball away from Ohio State, but especially sometimes, but like Hopkins was like throwing the ball away more on forced errors, and that was just like fuels that the ineptitude that they have on offensive. Like when the times when you do get the possession, you throw it away, just like makes those scoring droughts lengthen. I loved what I saw in that third quarter explosion. And I just, the ball movement was really nice. It just really felt like it got into a kind of a groove there. But like, as opposed to when Ohio State was going on their run, like Hopkins wasn't able to prevent Ohio State from like scoring those 2 goals, like during that like kind of explosion by McKenna and Hassan. I'm like, not like that; those 2 were like huge, but like I thought, like if Hopkins had like a 5-0 run in the third, and then turning that game into a little bit of a closer affair, then you kind of go into the fourth quarter 8-8 instead of down 10-8. So, but like it's kind of what it is for the season. Like after Hopkins got that 2-8, 10-8 with 7:43, they didn't score again until 3:09 in the fourth quarter, and that kind of was like the game was like well out of reach by then. Yeah, Jake, you nailed the head. Like there's kind of I don't want to put it all on goalies, but like kind of don't really feel confident with anything that we have right now on the roster in terms of like in front of the net. But
and they don't hit shots. Just don't.
That's just like that's what I was trying to state last week's Power Hour, that I didn't have the greatest expectations these next 3 weeks, but I was like, I just wanted them to play better, maybe get a little bit healthier.
I think they played better today.
That's what, and the stat, like, if you look at the stat, like they kind of were like leading in sort of significant portion, but it's just like they couldn't find the net. But I was like, I wanted them to be playing better, maybe get a little bit healthier, and then we're going to make a run. It's going to have to go through the Big Ten tournament, and like maybe like as they kind of not playing the shape is not the right, but like just find something.
You gotta get. I think the problem is they played better, I believe, but the score line looks the same, and so it's what we talked about with this team just lacking confidence. You don't feel like you played better when you lost by 4 again. If you maybe. I don't want to ever say that you can like gain something from losing in overtime or losing by 1 goal, but maybe you could. And Milliman does one thing he's always been very good at is he gives his teams an identity. He is a great kind of people kind of coach with connection with the players. Maybe you could have, if you lost a close one, you could have like said, all right, like, look, we lost, like gained something out of that. Playing a top 3 team down to the wire, but when you play better and you still lose by 4, it's kind of like I think it's probably hard to gain a lot out of that. It's just two teams in diametrically opposed directions. Ohio State plays with a lot of confidence. There's a swagger I think that they have in terms of obviously the physicality they play with, but offensively they never really get rattled. I mean, even when they turn the ball over a lot offensively. That's the weakness. That's the weakness they have, is that they turn the ball over a lot. And you wonder in a game, maybe we'll see next week against Maryland. The word always, you never give Maryland opportunities. You can never turn the ball over against Maryland and make kind of simple mistakes. We'll see if that kind of hurts them down the line. But they don't seem to get bothered by it. Like, they turnovers and they just come right back down, and they've got shooters and they've got guys. They got shooters and passers now. I mean, it sounds Ohio State on offense. It's not like Ohio State does anything. They don't do anything particularly crazy on offense. I mean, it's kind of like a battle. I mean, the Final Four is going on right now. It's basically like a dribble drive offense. They drive it and they kick it. And that's sort of their Ohio State's offense. They're going to dodge, and then they're going to kick it. They're going to draw a slide, and they're going to kick it to an open shooter, and they got guys who can shoot. And, I mean, last year they could dodge. I mean, last year, you look at their stats. I don't know if they might have one guy with more than 10 assists last year. Their offense last year was basically entirely unassisted goals, just guys dodging the case. The problem was they didn't have shooters, and they didn't have. They had some shooters, but they didn't have passers. They guys would dodge, and all they're doing is shooting. Now they got passers and they got shooters, and so they don't reinvent the wheel offensively by any means. But what they do works because they've kind of got the formula of it.
We give a shout out to before we go on, right? A shout out to our boy Alex Marinero. 40 goals, two assists. Just an incredible sound. This is a wonderful game. He had half of his season total in assists today to give him 7 total points to go with his 6 goals. But yeah, now I'm starting to get a little vibe about Trey Leclerc from him.
Crosse Magazine just tweeted out. In Ohio State's first 8 games, they shot 30%. In their last 4 games, they're shooting 41%.
Well, are you getting Trey Leclerc vibes, or is he getting maybe even better?
Marinier, no, Leclerc was more physically imposing.
That was for sure. That pop, and it's he had one goal from 25 yards. Yeah, sorry, man. We'll move on. He had one goal from 25 yards, and I was just all right, opposite. All right, I think we're going to go switch to the other game for a little bit.
All right, so we've spent 56 minutes on our 3 teams, so we're never beating the allegations. Sorry, everyone.
Listen, somebody accused us of being a Notre Dame homer today.
Oh my God!
Irish Nation, come on back! come on!
Say water's more. Come
on back, man.
Speaking of upset bids, Cornell survives a scary one against Brown and Providence. The Bears were definitely up for the challenge for most of the game. Big Red pull away a bit late, but nice effort out of Brown today, and kind of proving that every game in the Ivy League's never a gimme either. So
don't tell that to Harvard. That's good.
We'll get to Harvard in a second, but yeah, Cornell though, good road test. Come away with the victory, even if it's not as big as they wanted it to.
Shout out to Brown. I mean, last year was just, a disaster in every sense of the word. But Brown's a frisky team this year. Safe, I know you were watching a lot of this game, more than I was, but I was impressed with Brown defensively. Cornell was just, when they get, you talk about that extra gear, kind of Q says. I don't think anyone in the country offense, I'll say this firmly, no one has an extra gear offensively like Cornell does. They're so, one of their goals, I forget which one it was, but if you go back and watch the replay, you'll see it was early in the first quarter, first half. They played the sub game and they got the guy running out of the box, and they made 4 passes, bang, 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 and they got Kirst on the backside, and then he could have had a shot. It was the classic kind of CJ Kirst down the alley, and instead he made the extra pass for a layup, and it's you just can't draw it up any better than that. You just but Brown, I was impressed with. They did a great job staying patient defensively. We usually put patience offensively, but paying patient defensively. Cornell is always looking for the extra shot fake, extra pass, the one more. And so you really have to be on it defensively and really just stay committed and don't leave yourself out there too much. And I thought they did a great job with that. Cursed a couple times had some shots where they were able to get an extra stick in there on the on the wind up and force some shots to go the other way. They tried best Brown defensively when Cornell would make an extra pass, and they got this game to 9-9 in the fourth quarter. I tweeted out that we had a tie game, and then 10 seconds later Cornell came back out and scored with Cursed. But yeah, I was impressed by what Brown was able to do defensively to kind of keep themselves in this game. But Cornell was just a little too much.
Yeah, Jake, you're noting about the Brown guy that was watching it, especially that second half really was entertaining. Kind of felt like, Bears were really doing something. I noted in the chat that I think Connor Foley might be moving his way into one of my favorite goalies. Just definitely a great personality. The announcers were mentioning it as well. That just kind of definitely a great team guy. Played well up until the last about 8 minutes. They had Cornell dead to rights at 9-9, and really kind of felt maybe there was something going to happen there, and Curse just responds as potential towards and would with a big goal of 4 goals, 5 total points on the day for Curse. But yeah, that's you're right, Jake. They're Brown's starting to have a little bit of a personality, maybe trying to mimic what Dartmouth did, which kind of mimicked Penn, kind of a gritty defensively strong team, but didn't have enough of that to really pull up the upset. I think a couple, maybe a season or two, and then maybe Brown will really kind of have that moment maybe Dartmouth is, and be actually in the running for Ivy League tournament spot. But yeah, it's the announcers said a couple times there are no more victories in lacrosse, it's an L is an L. But yeah, definitely a well played game by Brown for about 50 minutes, and before Cornell did what it's supposed to do, as the number one team in many people's opinion.
All right. We're into extra time, but
that's just cruel. That's just cruel.
What?
To the banner.
Memes never die.
What happened in 2018 though?
Don't matter because it's not the original.
Was there an 18-7 in the Dome? I remember that.
Well, anyway, as Jake was saying, don't tell Harvard that every Ivy League game you got to watch your back, because they put the hammer on it right away on Dartmouth today, and they end up winning 18-7 in the woods of New Hampshire.
Dartmouth needed to press, pause, rewind.
Restart.
A restart, shut down. I mean, this was full control PS5 controller disconnect for Dartmouth in the first 5 minutes. This was a disaster. Dartmouth took 5 shots in the first half. Harvard had 11 goals. I mean, that pretty much tells you everything you need to know.
Harvard printing out this halftime stat sheet and posting it 3 hours later.
I think that was bad.
The team account retweeted Jake's post.
Jerry Bird. I because at one point it was 7-0 and before Dartmouth got their first shot. And Jerry Byrne just checks Twitter on the way on the team bus after the game, just retweets us.
It's it's cold-blooded, but I like that, Holmes. I like that.
I mean, shout out Coach Byrne.
Levittown represent.
And look, the tweet didn't have many tweets before that. I mean, he saw that right on the timeline.
Blind retweet.
Oh, man, this was, dude. Me and Safe picking Dartmouth in this game might go down as just one of the all-time blunders. I mean,
it was a heat check, Jake. We thought it was all the makings of a big-time upset. The weather. I remember we saw the weather forecast this morning.
It was bad there. Yeah. This was a Nick Young taking the 3 from mid-court, turning around and celebrating and having it rim out. This was that kind of heat check. I mean, dude, Harvard, man, just dump trucked them. Crimson kind of putting a stranglehold on that third place spot in the Ivy. And on the other hand, that fourth place spot in the Ivy, who wants it?
Yeah, because Yale beat Penn. This was going to be on the. I was going to do this from the next stretch, but yeah, Yale beats Penn 14-11, so that muddles up the fourth place race.
Yeah, I was very confident last week. I said Dartmouth was going to make it. Now it's like
They control it. They got Yale next week and then Brown right after.
oh yeah, I mean they win the games for sure, but I feel much less confident about it after I saw that. There were multiple possessions in that game. At one point, Dartmouth got 2 saves and failed to pick up the ground ball on the same possession. I mean, it was like just compounding. Like you saw the defenders just like hang their head. I mean, there's never been a more obvious. Oh wow, this is bad. If it was 4-0, it was like this is bad. Just nothing. Just total demolition from the first minute of the game.
Elsewhere in New England, Duke with a non-con victory over BU, 12-7. So Duke gets things a bit back on track.
Speaking of the Patriot League, Army. We
talked about Loyola winning.
Oh yeah, all right, there we go. Loyola.
Loyola won a game.
First win in 351 days.
Yeah, 12-11 victory in overtime over Bucknell.
So good for the Hounds.
Yeah, and as you said, Army 13-7 over Colgate.
Yeah, big one for Army. We spent pretty much this past week mentioning the mirror between this year and last year. Army last year started 7-0, got to number 1, lost to BU, came back and beat Carolina 13-12, and then lost to Colgate, and that basically sunk their at-large hopes of the tournament. This year, started 7-0, lost to BU, and then beat Carolina 13-12. And then they had Colgate coming this week, but no full all gas, no breaks for Army. Big win.
And they, going up to Hamilton, not great weather, and get it done.
Terrible. The Northeast, Mid-Atlantic,
miserable
Northeast,
day today.
It was miserable all everywhere. It was sunny in Chapel Hill, but yeah, just miserable stuff. Look, for Army, it's going to have to be absolutely going to have to be probably go to the Patriot League tournament and championship game and see what happens. Because they kind of took it. UMass lost the high point today, so that really took a hit to UMass's RPI. UMass is down to 25th in RPI. Now Colgate's up to 21st, so maybe Navy's 22nd. So you got a couple teams hanging on the edge. Oh, well, Rutgers did get back in.
Yeah,
so that did help. That did help Army. Is that Rutgers? Yeah. They did get so they kind of swapped. They basically swapped one for the other. So they got the Rutgers win, which is big. That helps for Army. You got Colgate, and they beat Yale. So 21, 22, 23. Army right now is, if we're talking about this, they need Colgate, Navy, Yale. They got a bunch of wins on the outside of that top 20. They need as many of those to hit as they can, because they got the big win. But Army and Duke's resumes are basically a polar opposite. Army's got a big win and then one more top 20 win, I think. Duke has no significant elite wins, no top 5, top 10. They got 4 top 20 wins. So for Army, yeah, it's going to need to be. They can't afford a loss somewhere if they're going to be in that at-large conversation. And they need some of these other games to kind of hit for them. Right now, they're 8th in RPI, but we'll see where that winds up towards the end of the year here.
Yeah, and as you said, High Point upsets UMass 14-9, so A-10, baby.
Two A-10 upsets back to the weeks. UMass beat St. Joe's, and now High Point beat UMass. So that should be once again probably a really strong conference tournament. Those will be the 4 really strong conference tournament come next month.
One other upset bid that nearly happened: Georgetown survives against Marquette and Milwaukee, 10-9 in double OT.
Marquette's got a good team. At least a better team than they've had in a while, I would say. I mean, shout out Jake Richard, first-year head coach. That team's been playing some solid lacrosse, and they nearly got. I mean, they would have been in the catbird seat in the
Big East.
Big East if they had won that game. They were 1-0. They would have got to 2-0
with a tiebreaker over Georgetown.
Yeah, that would have put them in a great position. Big East play. I mean, yeah, they started 2-3. They lost to Harvard, Notre Dame, and Michigan. I mean, Marquette doesn't have a loss outside the top 20. If you look at their 4 losses, I mean, in the poll, Georgetown obviously, look, the Big East RPI wise is a Chernobyl level disaster. But yeah, after that loss, I mean, they won 4 in a row. They beat Bellarmine, Utah, Air Force, and St. John's, and they played Georgetown close heater. The Hoyas, yeah, and this is it's a real. They got Aiden Carroll scored the game-winning goal, and Fulton Bayman, seniors, putting up big numbers. After that, it's a lot of kind of young guys on that offensive side of the ball, and they've had some injuries defensively. So it's going to be – this is all kind of program strength for Georgetown this year if they're able to get into the tournament. And honestly, also the weakness of the Big East. But I think it tells the rest of the league. Villanova's 2-0, and Big East play. They beat Denver last week. It's up for grabs, man. Like, it's up for grabs. If you're Marquette, if you're Villanova, Providence on the outside looking in, it's up for grabs for you in a way it hasn't been in a long time. Ever. Consider how strong Denver was for a while there. And Georgetown, obviously, the last couple of years, there's chances, man. There's chances for if these teams can get in that conference tournament. It's going to be hard to beat Georgetown conference tournament. That'll be tough. But, yeah, there's opportunities in the Big East.
All right, elsewhere around the scoreboard, we have Bryant in America East play beats NJIT 15-6. Canisius doubles up Mount St. Mary's 12-6. We were talking about this one in the chat. CAA's back to Thunderdome mode. Delaware beats Stony Brook 17-9 a week after Stony Brook beats Fairfield. And Fairfield comes around and rebounds and beats Hofstra, who was undefeated in CAA play, 14-10. So, Thunderdome back?
There are going to be some crazy conference tournaments, I think, in a month. This is we kind of hyped the season up as just kind of who knows, and that's what we got. And we got a month. We're a month out, and you could probably pick any number of 7-8 teams who can win the national title. Yeah, look, I mean, the RP. Here's what, not do the RPI thing again. The RPI does tell the story of the season, not maybe necessarily as you think, but in one way. Who knows with any of these teams? I mean, you've got Cornell and Ohio State 10th and 11th. You've got Penn State and Harvard 4th and 5th. And you've got, Michigan and Rutgers have 2 top 5 wins because they beat Maryland. North Carolina does not have a top 10 win. They're 3rd in RPI. Penn State has 1 top 10 win. They're 4th in RPI. The teams who are kind of picking up these elite wins are not the teams in some cases towards the top of the standings. And that's, I think, part of why there's such a kind of feeling of, man, who knows here is you've got a bunch of teams towards the top in the polls who look good. Nobody looks great. I think they're not a great team this year. And there's everyone's you're kind of like, man, I don't know if they've beaten anybody. But then you're also like, man, there's not a lot of people beating anybody. So, look, it's going to make for a fascinating kind of run down the stretch. Harvard had top. I don't know if I did, but apologies if I did.
Denver heads to Queens and survives the 10 a.m. body clock game. They win 14-7 over St. John's, so that one was close in the first half as well. Detroit Mercy beats VMI in overtime 10-9. Drexel beats Hampton 17-1. Richmond gets an A10 victory over Hobart 15-7. Hobart, your D3 men's hockey national champions. Get hype, Pierre Maguire. Lemoyne with a 9-4 victory over Wagner. Bobby Moe with a 13-9 win over LIU. Towson in a good, speaking of CAA, another good game in the CAA. Towson beats Monmouth 12-10 in Jersey. Elsewhere in Jersey, Princeton beats Vermont 10-5. Game that they, not as close as that scoreline suggests. Princeton had control the whole time. At this point, I think Princeton's toying with everyone that bets them on the over-unders, against toying with everyone that bets them with the spread. I think I saw a stat somewhere that they're 7-2, but they're 2-7 against the spread. So maybe they're just messing around with everyone. I don't know.
Say that again.
Supposedly Princeton, I saw somewhere this week that Princeton's 2-7 against the spread.
Really? What is?
Were the Duke North Carolina games, I guess, because they're underdogs?
Yeah, let me check. Our good buddy.
That's
I would have thought they would have been underdogs in state.
What is the spread in their game?
Posted earlier in the week.
The game's lost, man. The game's lost, boys. Oh, game's gone. Is that what they say in soccer? Game's gone.
Game's gone.
Yeah, Princeton. Yeah, teams with the worst current against the spread this season. Princeton was 2-6.
I feel like that's honestly. I feel like
I don't think they covered against Lehigh either. No, they didn't cover against Lehigh.
I didn't think they were favored against Penn State. They weren't favored against Duke or North Carolina either, right? So
I don't know.
I would have thought those would have been the three right there.
Those are probably I guess they might have been favored against Penn State. So it's basically 2-7 against the spread. So I'm going to go through their games. Well, two of them are Maryland and Cornell.
Yeah.
And they beat Penn State by 1 in OT, so they might have been favored by a couple in that game.
I think they were a half goal. I think they were a goal and a half favorite in that one.
Okay, so they missed by a half. Beat Rutgers by 6. I mean, were they favored by more than 6 in that game?
I think that was, yeah, I think.
Honestly, I'm starting to see it a little. I'm starting to see it a little bit. They've got a lot of if you look at their last 4 games, 2 goals, 3 goals, 5 goals, 5 goals. Look, I don't look at that. I don't think anybody looks at that and is like, man, Princeton only beat Vermont and Lehigh by combined 5 goals, or combined 10 goals, 5 goals in each. But the spreads, college across, Maryland was probably a 6 or 7 goal favorite against Rutgers today, and it's dude,
they were.
Yeah, brother, I have been saying it for 3 weeks now. There's not going to be a more than 5. There's not going to be a greater than 5 goal spread in Big Ten play. And Ryan, by the way, you're frozen. What's up? There's not going to be a greater than 5 goal spread in Big Ten play, and there hasn't been yet. five goals is max. So yeah, with lacrosse, the spreads can tend to get a little wonky. Look, it's college lacrosse betting, so the betting is basically just entirely on who people put money on. And I think you see that sometimes with these favored teams where they get 6 or 7 goal spreads against borderline top 20 teams. Dude, you ain't gonna beat a board in this season with these teams. In most seasons, it's hard to beat top 25 teams by 6 or 7 goals. Yeah,
yeah, it's not a comment on Princeton's performance. It's just kind of funny.
Yeah, it's a weird artifact. Yeah. Look, man, not everybody's 2022 Maryland just going out there just beating people by 10, 11, 12 goals. Honestly, there's a bit of, do you even want to do that? Well, if you got to see some of these teams again,
don't want to show your hand too much.
And also
Princeton's had control of these games too. So
yeah, that and also, man, when you beat people bad, people remember that. People remember Maryland beating them by 10 goals every week the last couple of years, like that. So, I mean, look, you want to win by as many as you can, Ollie, but there's definitely, you put the subs in, things like that. But it's interesting, I suppose. And also, look, they've played 8 top 20 teams in 10 games. There you go.
All right. Elsewhere in Big East, Villanova beats Providence 11-8. Sacred Heart beats Quinnipiac 12-7 in a Southern Connecticut derby. St. Joe's 15-3 over St. Bonaventure. You had Lehigh beat Holy Cross 10-6 in Worcester. Air Force 18-6 victory over Bellarmine. We covered Army beating Colgate 13-7 in Hamilton. Cleveland State 13-10 over Mercyhurst. Are we christening that as the Lake Erie Derby? I know it's Cleveland versus Erie. We'll workshop that one, I guess.
Listen, man, I put my faith in you with that stuff.
That's your corner.
That's your domain. You call.
All right, I'll workshop a Cleveland State Mercyhurst rivalry name.
See, no one else is doing it like this. No one else out there is like, I'm going to workshop a Cleveland State Mercyhurst rivalry name.
Merrimack 19-6 over Iona. Utah 16-10 over Mercer. Jacksonville 11-6 over Queens. Albany in the SUNY Derby. The I-88 Derby. Albany beats Binghamton 11-9. We covered High Point's upset of UMass. Siena beats Manhattan 12-8. We covered Yale beating Penn. And we did not cover an ACC play. Number 8, UNC, 18-9 over Virginia.
Virginia's had 4 losing seasons since in the NCAA era, since 1971. And they are 5-6. So they need to, I think they got a game against Lafayette non-con. That probably get them to 6-6. So otherwise they would need to split their remaining 2 ACC games against Notre Dame and that one against Duke to avoid their only the 5th losing season that they've had in program history. And again, NCAA era.
North Carolina's another one with that gear shift that we're kind of talking about. Like offensively, there was a point in this game where like UVA kind of made it interesting, and then North Carolina just busted it wide open. And I mean, you and I talk about it a lot, Jake. Duffy and young Petra need support. Got a good amount of it today in terms of like everybody else getting in on it, but like that is one dynamic too of that. Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna take them to the promised land, but they're fun to watch, especially when they just really start like.
Here's the thing with Carolina. I look at their roster and I look at the team and I think I don't know how much of that team is significantly better than they've been the last couple of years. But then I look at, and I think they've got 3 of the top probably 20 players in the country with Wambach, Duffy, and maybe put Petro in there. Duffy and Wambach will for sure. Petro may put in there. And it's like, how many teams have 3 top 20 players in the country? Like that's the thing with them. Their defense is young, and I don't think it's a spectacular group. I think we've seen some of that. Virginia offensively did things in this game that they haven't really been able to do all year. But if you got 3 elite players like that, in a season where, as we've talked about, is they're not a great team. I don't think they're a great team, but they have 3 great players, and that maybe could push you far. Brian, how many more games do we have to go through on the scoreboard?
That is it. We just have tomorrow one game, Penn State, Michigan, noon, Big Ten Network. Kind of a big game for Penn State to try to get off the snide in Big Ten play.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State, they don't have any wins. I mean, they have the Cornell win. They have 1 top 10 win, and they're 4th in RPI. It's hard to, everything that you have feels like, man, Penn State needs to win that game. And I think they need to. I don't think they can rely on this RPI kind of holding up for this long, but man, what a weird season. All right, I'm going to do, because we just talked about RPI, I'm going to do one thing, then we're going to get out of here.
Okay.
Cam mentioned, so Harvard's 5th in RPI, Cornell is 10th. Harvard doesn't have a top 5 win. Cornell does. And Harvard has 2 losses to Cornell 1. Then he asked, what am I missing? All right. If you go to Lax reference, if you go to the RPI rankings and you go to the specifically maybe if you just go to the RPI, I put it up on my phone, but maybe if you go to RPI rankings, yes. So if you go to the RPI rankings, I will share this my screen. Can I get it up? There we go. And then let me add this to the stage. All right, here we go. So there are 3 components to the RPI, and Zach has them here listed. There's win percentage. It's 25%. It's very simple. What is your win percentage? How many games you've won divided by the games you played. If you beat a D2 team, it doesn't count. Opponent's win percentage. So this is the main component of the RPI. It's 50%. It is what is the win percentage, again, win percentage, but of your opponents. So take your opponent's total wins divided by their total games. That's 50%. The last 25% is opponent win percentage. This is where you kind of get into, this is like the ACC or Big Ten or Ivy win these, not win their games, and it kind of creates this bubble sort of for everything to rise. The fact that, Syracuse plays Notre Dame, and then Notre Dame's going to play Duke in North Carolina, or Maryland's going to play Rutgers, and then Rutgers is going to play Maryland, is going to play Ohio State, things like this. So, win percentage, if I go by the win percentage quotient of RPI, Cornell is very strong. They're tied for 3rd basically with Army. Ohio State is 1st. Fairfield is 2nd. Cornell's 4th. Harvard is down at 10th. So we have the second one. This is 50%. This is basically the strength of schedule kind of metric here. Again, is it perfect? No. And then you have, in this one, Harvard is 5th. Cornell is 35th. That's your big difference. Cornell is 18th in strength of schedule. Harvard is 13th. That's not a big gap necessarily. But if you go by strength, if you go by RPI and you look at the strength of schedule, if the teams in the top 10, Cornell has the 2nd worst strength of schedule. If you go by teams in the top 20, Cornell is 8th. There are 7 teams with a worse strength of schedule in them. I mean, you got BU, Dartmouth, Fairfield kind of down here, but 18th. So this part is hurting them. And then opponent win percentage. This is where Cornell is pretty strong. Harvard is 13th. So really what is getting them is that. It's the strength of schedule kind of element for Cornell. And that's how you get. Now, also, look, it's not a big difference here. I mean, it's 0.659 basically to 0.632. That's not a significant jump, but that's where you're getting it from. And Cam, 100%. It does feel weird. Yeah, Harvard does have a bad loss in there. Cornell's only loss is to a top 5. What I will say is,
their numbers could benefit even just by playing Syracuse. So even if they lose next week, they could probably still jump up in the RPI rankings. Then
it's possible. I mean, Hopkins jumped 4 spots this week, as Dave mentioned.
It's 100%. Yeah, no, it's a racket. We've said this for years. Like
the opponent's win percentage for them will be good. I mean, that part will go up because they played Cuse, who's 9-2. Here's what I will say, Cam. Harvard quietly don't have a top 5. They have the win over Cuse.
It's maybe a top 5 win.
Yeah, and also where can I have it here? Harvard has 4 11 wins, 11 through 20. They beat Michigan, who's 12th. They beat BU, who's 17th, and they beat Dartmouth, who's 18th. Cornell has beaten Princeton, and then they beat Richmond, who's 13th, but that's it. So Cornell's resume is kind of quietly just a little light right now. If I mentioned for Cornell, Lehigh not really in there. Denver was is Cornell's like top third best non-con game you'd see. Part for Cornell, just some of it's an artifact of rhyme. It's an artifact of the schedule. Cornell's big non-con game this year is being played next week. For other teams, they played all their big non-con games. But Denver is one of their big non-con games. They don't get anything out of that. Denver's have a bad year.
Mm-hmm.
Hobart, nothing really there. Richmond, and good 13th. Penn State was one of them. They lost that game. Princeton, big win. Yale, Penn, Albany, Brown. These are just not. Cornell has only played 3 teams in the top 20 of RPI.
I mean, I wanted to kind of, I know because most people coming at me for picking Princeton this week as number 1. We're probably Terps fans, but I think some Cornell people Terps. I was just like, if you look at the schedule, they're played one Big Ten ACC team and they lost that. Again, it was a fluke loss, but they lost. And I'll see what happens with against Syracuse, and maybe that's can maybe propel.
Oh, yeah. The counterpoint's going to be Cornell and Princeton played, and Cornell beat them by 5 goals.
I hear you. I for sure.
I don't disagree. Again, we talked about it. I think you're
speaking of polls. Are we going to finally get Hopkins out of the top 20 this week on the media poll?
Yeah, I think that's about.
I think out of 20 last week.
They were 20 in our poll, I think. But yeah, it's. And Cam, to be fair, I completely can't put. Look, Princeton put all the top 5 except itself. Princeton played Maryland, North Carolina, Penn State, Harvard, Cornell, Duke,
Rutgers.
That's what makes Princeton's 3-1 against the top 5. So I'm yeah, one of them it's in the top 5 is them, and they only lost to the other team in the top 5. That they didn't beat.
And just one other question for our viewers, just so our viewers clarify. Do home, road, and neutral play any effect in the RPI now?
No. And so this is where Cam mentioned seems like the algo might need adjustment. I think the weights are fine as far as opponents, that's basically strength of schedule. The problem is home, road, neutral doesn't play a factor, and neither does margin of victory. This is where I think if you want to argue that the RPI is maybe antiquated compared to what college basketball has done, going from the RPI to the net.
How about compared to the pairwise in hockey?
And the net, look, there's all of this stuff there's going to be issues with. It's never going to be perfect. Can it be better? Yeah, I think you can. Home versus road wins. I think there's something to be some to that. I think it would be worth mentioning. What is the? I think you'd have to run the numbers on to what is home field advantage worth in college lacrosse. Because I think we all intuitively think it's worth something, but to what degree? Margin of victory, I do think should come into play. If you want to cap it at a certain point, if you want to be all right, once you get past 10 goals, that's it. So we're not talking about, to Ryan's point, teams not wanting to necessarily run up the score or not show their whole hand. All right, once you get past 10 goals, that's it. We're not going to incentivize you to beat teams by 15 or 16 or 17. But 10 goals, or anything up to that. If you beat a team by, because again, there's obviously who you play is hugely important, but how you play really matters too. And I think this is where margin of victory, if you want to talk about benefiting some of these other the teams outside the top 3, the big 3 conferences. The big 3 conferences are always going to win any kind of conversation around strength of schedule, and they're going to inherently rack up some of these wins because they are just, these teams are scheduling each other more and more. They're kind of insulating themselves, and then it's always going to be it's always going to help the ACC and the Big Ten, and it helped the Ivy in 2022 when these teams win a bunch of non-conference and they get to play each other. It's what helped the SEC in basketball so much this year. And now look, it's not that you shouldn't have that, because like if these teams win, then yeah, they're the best teams. Fair enough. But there is an element of, all right, Johns Hopkins being 14th in RPI. I mean, is Johns Hopkins a better team than St. Joe's this year is 15th? Are they better than, or even, and not even necessarily better, but if Fairfield had gone undefeated and lost one game in their conference tournament, do you want to see 6-5 Hopkins or 5-6 Virginia instead of Fairfield? I don't know. Or maybe even if you do, is that what's good for the sport? Take Army this year, for instance. Army, man, if you weighted things by margin of victory or something like that, I bet you Army would look really good, because Army beat the crap out of some teams. I mean, like Army's, I'll go by this, like the scores here. Army beat UMass, who was in the top 20 for all, 16-9. They beat Rutgers 9-3, who's in the top 20. Yale by 11. All of these teams beat Colgate by 6. Some people are going to counter that with, well, hey, yeah, they're beating up on worse teams. All right, maybe, but listen, Army didn't get to play Cuse this year. Cuse isn't going to go to Mikey. Army is kind of hurt. Like, they're scheduling who they can schedule. Like, strength of schedule is I think it's an imperfect metric in some ways, because at least I think it's not a great tool to use as far as comparing these teams. Like, strength of schedule is entirely about how good your coach schedules. And look, Army playing Rutgers or Yale, scheduling Rutgers or Yale, North Carolina. That's good schedule. UMass, that's good scheduling. Those are good programs. It's not Army's fault that Yale had their worst year in a decade. It's not Army's fault that Rutgers, Rutgers in the top 20, but it's not Army's fault that Rutgers isn't the Rutgers team that made the Final Four. These teams, to some degree, these teams can only schedule who they can schedule. And I think they should
be playing 8 conference games.
Yes, exactly. And I think that you can maybe reward some of these lower conference teams. Look, if Army goes 13-2, do you want to see 13-2 Army or 10-6 Duke in the NCAA tournament? Maybe Duke would be better, but is that good for the sport? To have the ACC, Big Ten, and Ivy hoover up all of the at-large bids? I mean, the ACC is already getting however many of their teams get in the tournament because they don't have an AQ. So that already is tilting the scales to some degree. So these are look, we could do 2 more hours on this conversation. But yeah, I think it's worth if you have issues with it, I don't think that's a problem. Just trying to kind of clarify it, because I think the last couple of years it's been pretty easy to kind of.
But this
the
year's
the committee hasn't had many calls to make the last couple of years. I mean, especially the last 2 years, there's been no bubble. Princeton and Michigan win the Ivy League tournament and Big Ten tournament. Boom, there you go, it's gone. This year they actually have some decisions to make, and it's going to be really tough because it's not the math doesn't necessarily easily explain this season. Now, again, it's April 5th. As much as we can say, hey, we're deep into the season. Yes, there's still a 1/3 of the season to go. So what it is now is not going to be what it is on Selection Sunday. And so that's why I think it's fair, and we'll have Mark Hart on this week at Fieldy Stick on Twitter to kind of talk about this. That's why I think it's good to kind of look at, and again, even this year it's tough, who teams have beaten, because not a lot of these teams have big wins. But who you beat, that stands up. The RPI and the math will change and things like that. And it's imperfect to kind of look. It's a tool designed for the end of the season. So looking at it now, like what the raw numbers are, is, it's just, you're kind of looking at, it's like, it's food that hasn't fully cooked yet. But who you beating, that matters. And that's why, look, Rutgers and Michigan. Listen, man, we had a Rutgers fan ask us on Twitter, like, is there anything we can do getting like an at-large bid? It's like, yeah. I mean, they're not out of it by any means. If they win their next couple games, Rutgers certainly can be in the conversation. It's really wide open there. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, that's just wanted to, kind of for the viewers, this is how it's gotten to this point so far. And look, it'll change again in next week.
All right. I like that conversation, Jake.
Thanks, man.
What should our viewers do for all that insight?
If you liked it, smash that like button. Unless you liked the video earlier, don't smash the like button. Hit subscribe. Crosse Commission on YouTube. It's been fun. We had a lot of viewers here. Hopefully pick up more as the come down the stretch of this season. And we'll be live every Saturday to break it all down. Got a big weekend next weekend, man.
Yeah, unfortunately, I won't be around because I'll be in D.C., but Jake and Safe will take you there.
Next week is my race. I was just going to say, I was going to talk to Jake about that out there.
Ooh, so we'll get Jake solo next week.
Power. If Maryland beats Maryland loses to Ohio State.
What time's the Maryland Ohio State game?
2?
2 o'clock?
Yeah, it's 2.
Yeah, Cuse Cornell on the Corrigan Sports Network at 4.
Oh, dude, don't get me started.
Might
Corrigan
be a 5K.
Are you going to that, Ryan? Uniondale? What is it?
No,
it's a 5K in Bowie that they got to advertise.
Selfless.
Is that how the
Because
town
I'm selfless.
Bowie?
Boys.
Booker.
Are you going to it, Ryan?
No, I'm in D.C.
Oh,
Otherwise,
sorry.
I would
That's
be
what
there.
Yeah.
Next weekend, Army Navy 12:30 on CBS Sports Network. Penn State Hopkins at 1. Ohio State Maryland at 2. Georgetown Denver for what's worth at 3. Cornell Syracuse at 4. Duke North Carolina at 4. Notre Dame Virginia at 5. Spread out 1, 2. I think Ohio State Maryland's on BTN, so I think that's 4. 4 TV games next week, going from 12:30 to 5. So we'll see, folks. We'll try to be with you.
All right. Well, headed out with guess what? I finally got to work, Jake.
Baby, hit it.
All right, but stay hydrated, everybody. We'll see you out there.
Becky Lynch President.
And here we go.
Edison Motors, your job, your credit. Edison Motors, your job, your credit. Ford, Hondas, Chevy, Beamers, and minivans. Over 600 cars, trucks, subs. Are you listening, man? Can you give me some shots vodka, please? Edison Motors, your job, your credit. Edison Motors, your job, your credit. It's gonna be on YouTube for sure. For sure, man. I'm gonna kill you.